Have you ever found yourself sitting quietly in the middle of a crowd, screaming themselves hoarse over a lifeless ball rolling across a white line, and in that exact moment, realized you felt like a forgotten alien abandoned on Earth? The deafening clatter of glass clinking, beer spilling over sticky wooden tables, shattered, raspy shouts, blending into the chaotic noise of a room packed with strangers hugging each other as if they had just survived a life or death situation together. And what about you? You just sit there, swallowed whole by the epicenter of a blazing emotional hurricane, staring blankly at the screen, while your soul feels utterly and completely hollow. You feel absolutely nothing, not even a single ripple. And it is not because you're a cold-blooded machine or born devoid of empathy. You know perfectly well that you have sobbed in the dark corner of a movie theater watching a fictional character sacrifice themselves. You have lost weeks of sleep over a careless word from someone you love. There are even days when you feel this world is so loud and sharp that you are absorbing all the pain of humanity right into your own chest. You are someone who feels things too deeply, too intensely. But this specific thing, this invisible collective electricity that jolts every nerve ending of the people around you when someone mentions last night's score, it just bounces right off you. And maybe for most of your life, whenever you fell into this alienating situation, you judged yourself. You secretly assumed your indifference was a flaw, a glitch in your ability to fit in. That you were a boring person who couldn't enjoy the shared joy of humanity. But listen to me. You are not broken. Your silence amidst that frenzied pack of humans says absolutely nothing bad about you. On the contrary, it whispers a spectacular truth about how your brain is actually wired. And to understand this secret, we must begin with a question so seemingly absurd that almost no one in the world bothers to ask it. Why, out of the tens of thousands, millions of magnificent, complex, and beautiful things a human brain could choose to care about, why did billions of people on this planet collectively land on this? Just stop and really think about that for a second. Billions of grown adults, educated, with jobs and families, voluntarily surrendering their emotions every single weekend, handing over their joy, sorrow, anger, and euphoria to an outcome they have absolutely zero control over. An outcome produced by strangers they will never meet in real life, in a game that will ultimately have not even 1,000th of a millimeter of impact on their actual lives when the alarm clock rings on Monday morning, signaling a grueling new work week. That is not normal, obvious behavior like we think it is. That is bizarre, crazy, and phenomenal behavior. And peeling back the reasons why they do it is actually the shortest, fastest path to understanding why you don't. Look inside the skull of a diehard sports fan at the exact moment their team concedes a goal. Their nervous system does not treat this as entertainment. Their nervous system is broadcasting bright red alarms as if this were a genuine survival threat. Heart rate skyrocketing, breathing rapid, sweat pouring, a massive flood of the stress hormone cortisol pumping into the bloodstream. It is the exact same biochemical cascade that would trigger if a wild beast were lunging at them or a natural disaster were crashing down on their heads. But here, that entire state-of-the-art defense system is catching fire. Simply because some stranger on the other side of the hemisphere just missed kicking a leather ball. Why such a ridiculous biological mix-up? The answer lies in the fact that the primitive human brain was never evolved to live in a modern world of skyscrapers, the internet, or takeaway coffee. It was forged and tempered over tens of thousands of years in harsh jungles and savannas, where humans had to rely on tribes to survive. For our ancestors, the tribe was not just a place to belong. The tribe was survival. It was the fragile boundary between being fed and starving to death, between living through the winter or becoming dinner for a predator. That life or death bond, that fierce herd instinct didn't just vanish when we started wearing suits and holding smartphones. It simply wandered off looking for new tribes to cling to, and professional sports is the most perfect modern tribe ever created. It has every element of a primitive religion. It has vibrant team colors. It has anthems and repetitive rituals before every match. It has designated mortal enemies to hate. And most importantly, It provides an utterly addictive feeling, the illusion that you belong to something bigger, something grander than your own small ego and mundane life. And when psychologists started asking who easily gets sucked into these tribes and who remains indifferent on the outside, they found data that completely changes how we view the issue. People who are not obsessed with sports, people like you, consistently score exceptionally high on a very specific psychological personality scale, openness to experience. This is not the extroverted, party-going kind of openness. This is the dimension of profound intellectual curiosity, of a rich imagination, and of a burning desire for constantly evolving complexity rather than monotonous loops. The latest research published in late 2024 confirmed this on a massive scale. From athletes and fans to complete non-participants. Put simply, your brain didn't fail to connect with the tribe. The truth is, your brain is frantically searching for a spice that is far deeper, more layered, and more stimulating than anything that tribe could ever offer. Let's dive deeper into the hidden layers beneath this indifference. Starting with the rawest physical level. For about 1 in 5 people on Earth, a frantic sports environment doesn't bring euphoria. It brings an energetic, heavy cost. Imagine walking into a stadium or a sports bar. The ear-shattering noise, the suffocating shoving of the crowd, the relentless unpredictability of the match, the erratic emotional explosions of those around you. To other people's brains, that is a fantastic neurological stimulant. But to yours, those elements don't produce a high, they produce depletion. They drain every last drop of your mental energy until you just want to curl up and disappear. And here is what society rarely frames correctly. They call that sensitivity weakness. A failure to enjoy the fun. But look back at the past. In that very primitive tribe, the one who didn't scream their lungs out with the hunters around the fire. The one who sat quietly in the shadows, sensing every subtle shift in the wind, hearing the crack of a dry twig under the paw of a predator miles away. The one who spotted the danger long before anyone else could see it, was the one who kept the entire tribe alive. That biological trait never changed, only the environment did. When you feel a noisy football match is an energy burden rather than a recharge, that is not an anxiety disorder that needs curing. That is the sharp calibration of a nervous system born to observe and warn, not to scream for. But the difference doesn't stop at the nervous system. It takes deep roots in the mechanics of the dopamine reward system. The entire culture of sports fandom is built on a psychological concept called intermittent reinforcement. Unpredictable outcomes, escalating tension that is never truly resolved. Today you win, tomorrow you might lose, and that loop goes on forever. This is exactly the core mechanism that makes casino slot machines an inescapable trap for gambling addicts. It manipulates the brain's pleasure center with the illusion of winning. But for some brains, including yours, the system completely fails to work. Your brain refuses to respond to borrowed outcomes. Remember the feeling when you finally solved a grueling math problem that had haunted you for days. Remember the moment you finished an art project, when you nailed a complex chord on the guitar, or when you grasped a profound life philosophy that cost you so much agonizing thought. That moment when your skills peak, that ultimate satisfaction of understanding something that required your actual personal effort, that is when your dopamine explodes. And once your brain is used to being fed with that premium dopamine of mastery, sitting around staring at strangers fighting over a ball suddenly feels incredibly tasteless and hollow. You aren't unenthusiastic because you lack passion in life. You act this way because your internal reward system is so proud that it only authorizes emotional highs that your own hands and mind have personally created. That is a much stricter, much harder standard to meet, but at the same time, a vastly more honest and authentic one than borrowing joy from young men running themselves into the ground on a patch of grass. And then we reach an even deeper layer, perhaps the clearest confession of the human ego, the puzzle piece of identity and self. Watch diehard sports fans closely after a match. When their team wins, they will puff out their chests, eyes shining, and declare loudly, "We won." But the moment their team gets crushed, the pronoun automatically flips without a second thought. They will frown, click their tongues and say, "They played terribly, they lost." Psychologists call this linguistic shapeshifting, basking in reflected glory. It is how a fragile ego quietly steals and claims victories that don't belong to it to feel larger, while instantly drawing a quarantine line around defeats to keep its self-esteem from chipping. It is an incredibly sophisticated psychological defense system. But let's face the truth, it only works if your sense of self is so weak that it absolutely requires external outcomes and other people's scoreboards to keep its shape from melting. People who don't get sucked into the sports vortex usually carry a completely different identity structure. They are the ones who have painstakingly built their identity from their own thorny choices, from an internal core value system, from real scars and their own personal history, not from frivolous group affiliation. If you strip away their jersey, strip away the name of the team they are branded with, they still stand there, tall, intact, unchipped, knowing exactly who they are in this life. Your apathy in front of the TV screen is not cold alienation. It is proof of an inner foundation so solid that it doesn't need to look up at a flashing red LED scoreboard to know it is still standing. But for some people, deep beneath those neural mechanisms and egos, lies one final layer. Quieter, harder to name, but highly definitive. It was a moment somewhere in life, maybe not fully conscious, but you started to feel that something was terribly wrong, grating, and aching about the arithmetic of this world. Imagine a teacher burning the midnight oil, exhausting their youth and dedication to mold the futures of 30 children, carrying the weight of an entire generation. Yet the money that teacher earns in a full year of grueling work equals exactly what an unknown reserve player rakes in over a short week. Or think of an ER nurse who hasn't had a proper full lunch break in 3 straight months, eyes sunken from sleep deprivation, hands blistered from chemicals to keep the heartbeats of strangers going while right across town, blinding lights illuminate a massive stadium where expensive tickets sell out in minutes just to watch healthy people play a game. That chilling gap between what a society is willing to pay for and what that society actually needs to survive. That gaping abyss. Once your eyes have accidentally seen it, you can never permanently unsee it. Psychologists call this phenomenon justice sensitivity. For those who carry this heavy awareness in their souls, stepping back and refusing to participate in the fanatic sports culture is not apathy or numbness. It is a quiet refusal. A personal protest with no announcements, no banners, no noise, and no need for anyone in the world to notice or validate it. It is absolutely not a superior judgment aimed at the cheering fans out there. It is simply an honest audit, a transparent accounting of the conscience regarding what kind of attention and mental energy truly deserves to be spent. But to those who are smiling and nodding because they see themselves in the thoughts above, here is the part where we really need to sit down, hold our breath, and face things at their most naked. Because everything wonderful I just said could be entirely true. But at the same time, there might still be another shadow silently lurking that deserves to be exposed. A brain highly open to experience. A dopamine system hungry for mastery. A stable internal identity. And a heart sensitive to human fairness. All of these are real and noble qualities. However, sometimes, just sometimes, they are also incredibly convenient and perfect shields. Because the exact same traits that protect you from the frivolous emotional volatility of football fandom can also be easily exploited by you to protect yourself from emotional investment in anything else in the real world. The craving for depth and perfection can easily turn into a beautiful excuse for you to never actually start anything. Inner stability can be twisted into a safe script where you never dare to risk anything, never dare to love with all your heart, never dare to pursue a passion. And that profound sensitivity can become the ideal exit door to escape any room that demands too much effort or sacrifice from you. Remember, a personal identity is only truly considered solid when it has been thrown into the storm, tested, and stretched to the breaking point. Not a pretty crystal piece kept safely in a glass case just because you never dared to gamble it with life. So, I want you to ask yourself a deep question hidden beneath the shell of all questions. Is your cool indifference towards sports part of a larger life where you are truly, sincerely, and wholeheartedly investing your entire being into something else? It could be a risky startup dream, an art piece you are inking, a deep relationship soaked in sweat and tears, an unnamed community project, something that has every potential to betray you, to disappoint you bitterly, something carrying the actual weight of reality, a gamble where you are betting your own flesh and honor. If the answer echoing from the bottom of your chest is yes, then congratulations. All the beautiful psychological analysis above describes you accurately down to the millimeter. But if in a moment of absolute silence in the dark night, the truest answer you dare to confess to yourself is no, then the distance you've created from sports is no longer a special personality feature. It is just a cowardly habit. A habit of dodging vulnerability. And the good news is, habits are not like innate personality traits. Habits can absolutely be dragged into the light to be dissected, examined, and changed. Therefore, after peeling away every layer of illusion, here is the single, core takeaway I truly want you to put in your pocket and carry with you after this conversation. The reason those frantic sports events out there cannot penetrate your emotional filter is not because there is an absence inside you. It is not because you are missing a neural circuit, or because your ability to enjoy the passion of life has withered away. It is because you possess a brain that quietly asked a razor-sharp question most people out there never even think to ask. Out of all the small and magnificent things in this world too, which I could freely give my attention and finite life energy, does this truly deserve me? And then, in absolute silence, without needing a single drop of dramatic flair, without needing to prove anything to anyone, and without demanding that anyone in this world understand or sympathize, your brain answered no. Your lack of interest in sports is not the disease of apathy or coldness toward life. The most academic scientific studies call it an enviably healthy psychological state, a completely different, more sophisticated strategy for seeking existential meaning, for managing emotional filters, and for defining your very self in a world full of borrowed templates. And this appears much more often in fiercely independent thinkers than the crowd out there could ever realize or accept. So, the next time you find yourself stuck in a loud room, and someone enthusiastically shoves into your hand that tired old social script you never bothered to memorize, the script about the breathtaking twists of last night's game, the calculated standings, or the star player the whole world is buzzing about, you don't have to force a stiff smile. You don't have to tense up and perform a fake enthusiasm you absolutely do not possess. You just need to sit there, take a deep breath, and calmly know exactly what you know. That while everyone else screaming themselves hoarse in this room is busy borrowing and leaning on the story of strangers just to feel like they exist, you, in your own proud silence, are still diligently holding your pen. Every single day, writing the epic novel of your own life. A novel where you are the sole main character, taking real falls, feeling real pain, achieving real glory, and most importantly of all, your great story never has an off-season.